The Somerton Man has been an enduring mystery for almost 80 years.
There'll always be a public interest in the case.
Do you know about the Somerton Man? I never did, and it's one of Australia's best mysteries. In 1948, this man washed up on a beach in Adelaide, and nobody knew who he was. For decades, we wouldn't, until just a couple of years ago. This is the story of the Somerton Man. This man washed up, as I said, on a beach in Adelaide, and people didn't know who he was, and there was a investigation by police. As you can see to the left-hand side there were a lot of theories of who this man was, and it took a very long time to work out who it was. So I'm going to try to give you a Cliff Notes version of this story, so at least you can then go to the pub and be like, do you know about this? Because it's hectic. You can't really talk about the Somerton Man without also talking about this man, Derek Abbott, who is a professor from Adelaide University. But he's not like a forensics guy. He is a electrical and mechanical engineering guy, but he is probably like one of the most knowledgeable people on this case. Let's have a look at what actually happened. So December 1st, 1948, this man, the picture of that man, washes up on Somerton Beach. Yeah, there you go, opposite the crippled children's home at 6:30 a.m. The body had not been in the water. It's believed from the autopsy that he was poisoned, and this actually is revealed a couple days later. These are newspapers from I believe, the Adelaide Advertiser. And this one, just a couple days later, says it's now believed that the man took poison on the beach on Tuesday night. So he washes up on the beach, right? There are no tags on his clothes, and he didn't have any possessions on him. And so immediately that starts theories that, maybe he was a spy. And you can see, there was all this sort of stuff around, who was this guy, right? So he was found with this phrase from a piece of paper ripped out from a book, Taman Shud. Yeah. This Persian phrase, Taman Shud, which means, it's over, it's finished. Funnily enough, I believe it's just been referenced in the newest Phoebe Bridgers album. That was just something my mate who I was talking to about this case the other day referenced, or mentioned, I should say, which is just bizarre, but there you go. There was a suitcase found at the railway station, but the clothes on him didn't have any tags. Oh, look, there you go. There's what the beach looked like where he was found. That must have been the children's home. If we go through, there's the thing from we'll zoom that in so you can see it a bit better. There we go. Look at that. This is from the book. So this was handed in. So that was found on him. There you go. It was a rare New Zealand edition of this book. It's a poetry book, I believe. And a man handed this book in to police. He said he found it randomly in the back of his car. Kind of sus, but anyway. And then I don't think anyone's ever been able to work out what this code was. And then police also made this bust. Look at this. It's kind of hectic, and I'll show you another photo of it when I can. It'll be in the Australian story, which I'll show you very soon. But it was a bizarre case. There were multiple theories. Oh, there you go. Look, those are the newspapers that I found on Trove. Trove is a great resource, by the way, if you've never used it. You can get it usually through any of your city libraries stuff, and it's quite cool to see old newspapers, in my opinion, anyway. So Derek Abbott, he was kind of one of these main guys that had done a lot of research on this, and there's this Australian story video that was done. And the funny thing about Derek Abbott is there's actually a secret love story in the Somerton Man story, and it's to do with Derek Abbott, and he met his wife through uncovering this case. So to condense a bit of this story, there was a woman who came and looked at the bust, that plaster bust that I showed you. So there was this woman that came and looked at this plaster bust, and they assumed that she knew him somehow. It's all a little bit weird, but she acted kind of odd as well and involved. So this is Abbott talking about finding this woman. But the police had already spoken to her back in the day, and he wanted to find her again because she'd acted this weird way when seeing the bus. She denied knowing him, but there was still something suspicious. Well, maybe suspicious is the wrong word, but there was something about it, right?
It seemed to me the key was to find out the identity of the young woman. So I researched her name independently. I made use of hospital records and electoral roll records. I was able to then find a photograph of her, went to see Paul Lawson, the man who made the plaster bust.
There it is.
And
Look at
whose
that.
office she came to in 1949
There we go.
to view the bust, lifted up his glasses and looked at it, and he says, "Why, this is Mrs. Thompson." And so I knew straight away I had found the right person, Joe Thompson.
By the time that he'd found her, Joe Thompson had died, but she had a son. And then by the time he found him, he had also died, but he had a daughter who was adopted out, grew up in New Zealand, but she was living in Brisbane. And they met. He wanted to, I think, meet her to get her DNA and whatever and have a chat. But they hit it off. And I think they got they proposed the next day, I think they say in this documentary, which is pretty crazy, but also really cool. I think they've got 3 kids. It all seems pretty wholesome. I hope they're still together. It'd be kind of awkward if they weren't. But anyway, this all came down then, and they wanted to do some DNA work. And what was quite interesting was, here we go. So that same plaster bust, because obviously it's been so long, they're able to do DNA stuff on this plaster bust.
So the plaster cast, embedded in the cast, are hairs.
Because they made a cast of this dead man's face because they knew they were going to have to bury
I
him.
thought to myself, perhaps we can extract DNA from these hairs. So we managed to get some hairs.
Yeah, the reflected light microscope is very, very useful in looking at the surface morphology.
How cool
We
is
are
this?
only
This is
able
such
to
nerd shit,
extract
but it's so cool.
2% of the amount of DNA that we really need to form an identification. We need it at much higher concentration levels, which we could do with the Somerton Man's teeth or his ear bone, for example.
I studied it at law school, like many students, because it's a case of intrigue and mystery. And so obviously now for over 40 years, it's been on my agenda. Well, in South Australia, to exhume a body, it needs the Attorney General's approval for obvious reasons. And I'm quite happy to give my approval.
And she did. And so the body, as I showed you at the start, was exhumed. And they've gotten some DNA. And then what happened later on was a little bit of a spoiler of who he is. But anyway, Mr. Abbott submitted it to what looks like Ancestry.com is what they use in all the pictures, but no one ever says it. They thought that it was going to be his wife, but it's actually not. Shock, horror, because they submit it to Ancestry.com.
We looked for people with no date of death on that tree. There was one that stood out because A, he was male, B, had roughly the right age range, and C, was very closely connected to the Keane family. And as we know, the Somerton Man had a Keane on his tie. This turned out to be a chap called Charles Webb, who had no date of death details. Yeah, so he was born Carl Webb, but he only went by the name Charles Webb. Seemed that this chap had just gone off the radar after 1947, and this could be our man. But we had no evidence. It was just a guy on a tree with no date of death, and we set out to either prove or eliminate him as being the Somerton Man. And to prove it, what we had to do was see who his mother was, then tunnel down the family tree just on the mother's side only, and find somebody alive today and see if their DNA matches or not. And that turned out to be somebody in Victoria by the name of Antero.
So yeah, basically it came back as a match, and it was found out that this man is the Somerton Man. Now, police, I believe, are doing their own. SA Police have been contacted by many of the same family members located by Professor Abbott, but they remain tight-lipped on their progress. So they're doing their own investigation as well. Yeah, so I think there was some things of who was Carl Webb? He was a man that vanished, basically, from Victoria. Yeah, filed for divorce on the grounds of desertion. That's wild, presumably not knowing that her husband was lying dead in an Adelaide cemetery. Threatening a Mooney, a man with no particular friends of his own, who was often in bed by 7 p.m. So it sounds like he may have not been a great guy. It's a wee bit sad for them because they thought that, they say in the documentary, him and his wife, they just want to know who it is. They thought that she might have been related to him. But yeah, it's a crazy story. A crazy story that they met through this. There's that weird love story from this whole thing. But yeah, so the man was identified as Charles Webb. I mean, this is a real gloss over of the whole story. It's pretty fascinating, and it's definitely worth go watch the Australian story if you never knew about it. Yeah, this is what I've learned in a short amount of time, and I guess the last update came from just a couple months ago, a month ago, which was about the police report that's due for the coroner.
On a plaster bust made of the Somerton
go.
Man to a genealogy website and found his relatives still living in Melbourne.
I'm absolutely certain of my findings, that his identity is Charles Webb, who was the son of a baker from Victoria, and it's beyond all reasonable doubt.
SA Police says the investigation is complex and ongoing and that it will provide a report to the coroner once it's completed. Professor Abbott says police have told him it should be done within the next 2 weeks. Once the coroner hands down the findings, Charles Webb's family will be able to decide whether to rebury him here at the West Terrace Cemetery or move him back home to Melbourne. But the family's told the ABC it's likely he'll be reburied here in Adelaide.
To now, a very brief overview of the story of the Somerton Man. It was one that actually someone had gotten to my DMs and recommended, the National Cat DMs. So just know that if you do that and reach out for suggestions of what I should have a look at, I do look at them. This one was a great suggestion, so thank you very much. And please, let me know what else I should take a look at. And if you enjoy this kind of thing, give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a follow, whatever. Get in touch, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.